So version 1.0.4 has been out now for a couple of weeks. However, I've been getting a few questions from people about what exactly is in it, so hopefully this quick video will help address some of those questions. I should point out that this is mostly a bug fix release, but there are some features that are worth mentioning. But I would still suggest that you go and check the full changelog if you want the nitty-gritty details. So in a particular order, the first one here is the has title condition. So this means that you can now specify whether testing for a window has a title or not. So you might want to do something such as this. And if I run that, that would echo hello for every window that has a title. Not particularly useful in this case, but it is sometimes helpful to differentiate between windows that have a title and those that don't, particularly if you wanted to check for, say, transient windows. Snap attraction, so that's a feature whereby if you have a window and you are moving it around, the window will snap to the screen edges. You can see here that the outer border is actually a dividing line between two screens. I've got this one split in two, and as I move the window across, it snaps only to the outside edge of the buttons there, but again it snaps to the screen border. And that's a very helpful feature, particularly if you're moving windows between screens, as I am there, for instance. So Randa has always been configurable via fvwm events. However, I have now included a specific function that you can define, Randa func, that you can also hook into for any Randa change that you want. And the reason I did this is because I think it's useful to have a sort of catch-all for any Randa events. So I use this typically to move windows about and reorder windows, as when I unplug a laptop or plug in an external display, for instance. The scroll command now understands per monitor settings. So before it wasn't possible to specify the screen if you're wanting to use the scroll command, and particularly if you use a per desktop configuration. That's quite useful because now you can independently scroll different screens. So the syntax for that would be scroll screen, monitor, and then the coordinates that you wanted to scroll by. I've added some variables to be expanded, so this is in terms of the monitor namespace, so monitor.desk, monitor.pagex, page Y tells you which page in the X and Y direction particular monitor is on, likewise the previous desk, previous page X and previous page Y. Default configuration can be implemented via fvwm user local.config. This is quite handy. This allows you to add additional configuration options to the default config without copying it over in its entirety. So if you happen to like this configuration out the box but you wanted to add some bits and pieces to it, you don't need to copy that over. You can now define this file, and I've got such an example here where, for the purposes of this video, I've loaded up a certain module and I've defined some key bindings to make things easier. Move command has a new option, shuffle. So I said before about snap attraction and moving windows. This is really useful. You can now move a window around and it will move to the closest object in any given direction. If that happens to be a window, then it will move to that window like that. If it happens to be a screen edge, then it will snap to a screen edge like that, and I can keep going and it will keep snapping in either direction, which is quite handy. So the geometry window, if I move this window, if you look in the top left, you'll see a coordinate bar there. That's gained a geometry window command, and you can specify certain properties about it, hide it, show it, set a color, set the position, and which screen it appears on. So when thinking about sizes of windows, it's quite handy to be able to say that a window should have a minimum and a maximum size, and you can indeed do that. In fvwm, you've been able to do that for many years. However, you can now specify a value C for the size of the client. So this is potentially useful for Xterms terminal windows where you want to enforce a client size of say 80 by 24 at a minimum. So the pager module, that's had the biggest amount of changes, I think, in a good few years. So I'll come back to the aspect ratio and monitor, but scrolling in fvwm pager per monitor works. So by default, the desktop configuration is global, which means that if I switch to a different page, all connected monitors will move to that page. I can, with the third mouse button, click and drag and move the viewport wherever I like, halfway between two pages, what have you. And it looks a little strange, I suppose, if you've got two monitors, because you can easily find yourself in a position such as that if you so chose. So it is a little unusual. If I switch to per monitor, and if I now load up a pager that's been told to look at a specific monitor, I do that by specifying the monitor name, which I think this is the second one I'm looking at. Make it sticky. If I scroll around that, you can see that I am moving independently the viewport for that monitor, and that will look very strange. You can see the effect that that has, but that's just the nature of how it works. You'll also notice that the aspect ratio is maintained. So in resizing that window now keeps the aspect ratio. That's to better manage the windows here. Again, if I move this to the other monitor and scroll, it still will only affect that monitor. So the effect can be a little strange. So that's the pager, and again, if I just sort of scroll here, you'll see that the pager picks up on that quite nicely. So the Icon Man module, that's had some other fixes as well, particularly around the resolution, so you can be a lot more descriptive in specifying which desk and which pages the resolution should work from. Previously you couldn't do too much with it, but now you can specify quite a lot of those options and really sort of hone in on which windows appear there. So those are sort of the key features. I've mentioned Edge Scroll already, you saw that just then. That's now working per monitor quite nicely. And for anyone that was using it, the label option in the pager module has been removed, and instead you should be setting your desktops via the desktop name command. As I said before, there's plenty of other bug fixes, and I'm sure some other features I've neglected to mention, but these were the key highlights that I wanted to mention.